Hello and welcome to a VSA video. I'm Ollie O'Donnell and I'm delighted to be joined today by Ian Tchacos, Executive Chairman of ADX Energy, the ASX listed European E&P with assets in Austria and Italy. Ian, thanks very much for joining me. How are you today?
Yeah, very well, Ollie. It's a pleasure to join you.
Brilliant. Well, you've had a very exciting year. You've made a monster gas discovery, you've raised funds, and now you've just had an update showing what you're planning to be do over the balance of the year. So let's start off with Anshof, where you're producing. Your recent quarterly update shows a nice increase in production, break even operating profits. So what have you done over the last few months to make those increases and pave the way for the year ahead?
Yeah, well, look, at Anshof, we installed a permanent facility which actually has capacity up to 3,000 barrels a day. We were previously producing the Anshof 3 well on a long-term production test. Then we had to shut install a new facility, and now we're also ready not only to continue producing from Anshof 3, which has been going on since April, but also to drill the Anshof 2A sidetrack well and hopefully add that to the production of Anshof 3. And look, we've got high hopes for that well. It looks like it'll have about 6 times the pay of Anshof 3, so we should be able to see much greater production from that well.
And are you able to say what kind of increment you're targeting with this sidetrack
Yeah,
well?
look,
How do you get up to 3,000 barrels a day from where you
three
are
thousand
today?
barrels a day would take a number of wells, but say for argument's sake, we would expect probably an increment of around 300 barrels a day, which would increase our, if you like, net production in Austria by around 50%.
Excellent. And well, given last quarter, you were more or less break even. This should all drop through to the bottom line.
Yeah, it will, because obviously, the facility's in there. It's really just trucking costs, and so it'll be pretty much pure cash flow. Our net costs at Anshof are around, probably, I'd say, about 35 to 40 euros. So we'll be getting somewhere around 40 US a barrel, I guess, for production from there.
Excellent. And you have a partner on this project. So how's it funded?
Yeah, I mean, it's about 50% funded by a company called M&D, which is a large, if you like, service company and production company in Europe, and it's part of their residual funding for the Anshof 2 well, and that part of that transaction is they'll also fund a second well. So hopefully we'll get a good result at Anshof 2A, and then we'll move on to a subsequent well, probably by the middle of next year.
Brilliant. And what sort of timing should we be looking at for the results of this sidetrack?
Yeah, the sidetrack should start very soon. We've already started moving modules for the rig. It's coming out of Switzerland, so it'll take a little bit longer than usual, crossing the border and importing, exporting. But it should be probably set up to drill by around the end of the first week of September. And it'll take about 2 weeks to drill. Assuming a successful well, we should see potential production from Anshof 3, I would say, by mid-October.
Excellent. And this is obviously your sort of stable platform for production, covers operating costs and G&A, but your discovery early this year is the company maker. Um, you've got some operational plans at Welchau. So what is it? What is ahead for the rest of the year?
Yeah, look, I mean, two things. Obviously, we're drilling a second exploration well this year. We're also drilling the Lichtenberg well, so that might just start before Welchau. So we're hoping after the drilling of Anshof 2A, then we'll move the rig to Lichtenberg and commence drilling that well. Now, the potential resource there is much more modest than Welchau. but we're looking at sort of 20 to 30 BCF of gas. But that's also play opening well. It's very close to infrastructure. And again, those gas resources there can be very valuable, and they can also be highly productive. So that would also be, a nice bonus to our cash flow position, but also, build our gas reserve position, which, with everything that's going on in Europe right now is really important for us, and also very important for Austria. But as you say, Welchau is the one that is the most glamorous, if you like, opportunity in the portfolio. And look, what we're hoping for is that, during probably by the middle of October, we'll commence testing at Welchau. We've intersected a column of approximately 450 metres based on very good shows. So that testing program could actually go for quite a while, because we'll be testing a number of zones in that well.
And what have you got to do in terms of permitting? What's left outstanding on that front?
Yeah, look, what we've done is we've applied for an environmental permit to allow us to test for up to 6 months, commencing the beginning of October through to the 31st of March. And that's purely for testing. If we get a good test, we'll also be going for further permitting to either deepen that well or also drill follow-up wells. So obviously, what we'll tend to do is go out for a new permit, for each operation. So what we're looking at now is a testing program that could take us up to the end of March. So because, we've got a well that's already drilled, we basically can run different completions in the well and be able to test over an extended period of time. Also, in Austria, you are allowed to produce up to 30,000 barrels of oil equivalent during a test. So if we have a high liquids content, there's also a possibility that we could be extracting cash flow from the test.
And one of the points you've highlighted in your recent presentation is how Welchau could potentially be much more profitable than the other comparable large discoveries in Europe. And you touched on it in terms of proximity to infrastructure, but what are the other key characteristics that you think make Welchau so attractive?
Yeah, look, I mean, obviously, what's attractive about Welchau is potentially it can be quite big. Obviously, that always helps. But what's also really important about Welchau is it's relatively shallow, and we're able to drill it with a relatively modest rig. So we were able to drill that well probably about 30% under budget. So look, obviously the main thing that goes into the capital cost for these sort of projects is essentially the drilling costs, but also processing and tie-in costs. So we're pretty close to a pipeline. Obviously, if you have a big reserve onshore, that's very valuable, say versus offshore, but also the fact that it's relatively shallow. And so far from what we've seen, we've got sweet hydrocarbons both in the gaseous phase and in the liquids phase, which means also less processing.
And you mentioned what's going on in Europe at the moment. The gas price is actually up 70% from the February lows. It's now at about 40 euros a megawatt, maybe just slightly below that, and up about 40% year to date. So what has happened this year to push prices back up?
Yeah, look, I think it's a combination of things. I think, the very high dependency still on Russian gas is worrying a lot of analysts. And so we're coming up to a hard date of November of this year, where actually the pipeline that comes through Ukraine, that supply contract is up. And actually both the Ukraine and Russia said they're not going to renew that contract. So that could have, very dramatic effect on Russian gas price, on gas prices in Europe, which are still highly dependent on Russian supplies. So, but also generally, the EU states have tried to reduce their dependency on Russian gas, but unfortunately, there's nowhere else to go right now other than domestically produced gas, which is still limited, and also LNG.
So the structural issues really haven't changed that much since the gas crisis 2 years ago.
No, look, essentially it's kind of 30, 30, 30, 30 domestic, 30 imported LNG and 30 Russian. And obviously, if you lose that 30 from Russian, then, we're in deep trouble. Even though, in Europe, there's been quite a bit of supply destruction, probably up to 15, 20% supply destruction due to high gas prices. So, say somewhere like Austria, you have cement plants and things like that being shut in because they just either can't get gas or get gas at a reasonable price.
Excellent. There's lots of catalysts to come over the next couple of months, and you've got to think about 11.6 million Australian dollars in treasury, so well funded to complete all of those. Perhaps you can just give us a quick recap of the milestones ahead and the timelines.
Certainly. So, look, as we mentioned earlier, Anshof will start drilling early September. We should have results by the end of September. We also plan to come out with an update for our shareholders on what our plans are for Welchau in terms of our testing program, and also what the resource range might look like based on the ongoing studies that we've been doing. So that's probably going to be towards the third week of September. Then we go into the drilling of Lichtenberg, and we should have results from Lichtenberg around the end of October. And then we'll also, at the same time, be commencing testing at Welchau, which will probably commence around mid-October. And as I said, it'll be a number of tests. So that could be, if you like, we could have news flow from Welchau, well into Christmas as we do multiple tests.
Fantastic. Well, it's going to be an exciting few months. Thanks for the update, Ian, and we look forward to the updates.
Thanks, Ollie. It's a pleasure to join you.